Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Polyglot Perspective Podcast, hosted by me, Taylor.
And me, Lily. In today's episode, we'll be continuing our language learning discussion, and we'll be answering questions such as how do I start learning a language? And how do I best utilize my resources?
But before we get started, we would really appreciate it if you could take a few seconds to subscribe to the podcast and our YouTube channel, as well as leave us a great review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. This would help us out a lot. Thanks so much. And without further ado, please welcome our guest for Season 2 on Episode 2 of the Polyglot Perspective Podcast, Andy.
Andy is a high school junior living in Saudi Arabia, originally from Houston, Texas. He speaks English, Chinese, and French fluently, and is currently focusing on learning Turkish as well as a bit of ASL. He is also interested in exploring conlangs and creating his own. Outside of languages, he enjoys digital arts and music and plays the tuba and the guitar.
We're super excited to have you on the podcast, Andy. At the start of each episode, we have the guests introduce themselves in the languages that they're currently learning. So please introduce yourself.
Here's my introduction in Chinese. 大家好，我叫 Andy，我来自美国德克萨斯州，现在住在沙特阿拉伯，今年18岁。And now in French. Bonjour tout le monde, je m'appelle Andy et je viens de Texas. J'habite actuellement en Arabie Saoudite et maintenant j'ai 18 ans. And now in Turkish, I'll try. Herkese merhaba, benim adım Andy. Amerikalıyım. Ama şu an Suudi Arabistan'da yaşıyorum. Şu an 18 yaşındayım. And yeah, that's it, I think.
Okay, great, nice.
I noticed when you were talking about yourself, like you brought up the fact that you live in Saudi Arabia. And what brought you to Saudi Arabia since you used to live in the US?
My parents' job, when I was like 10, they found a new job here. So that's what brought the whole family over. And at the time, it was a very different experience. And I didn't really, I felt sad, I guess, leaving my friends, but it was a nice change, I guess.
Yeah, how long have you stayed in Saudi Arabia?
Let's see, I moved when I was like 10 years old. So it's been 8 years since we moved here. But I haven't stayed like for 8 whole years. Like I went back to the States for like boarding school. So like more like 5, 6-ish years.
Mm-hmm. And like for future plans, are you planning on staying in Saudi Arabia, moving back to the US, or just, you don't really know? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Like it really depends on what happens, but probably not like for the rest of my life, like going somewhere new, maybe moving back, but yeah, we'll see. It really depends.
And how was the process of moving? Like, what age did you move? And like, what did you have to do just to move to a different country?
Yeah, at the time, at 10 years old, it was, I didn't really feel much about it, I guess, but once we got here, it was a kind of maybe boring at first. Like I didn't know anybody. I was kind of alone, but then reaching out to people, and that was how I kind of felt more comfortable here in the community.
Yeah, I mean, like I personally haven't really like moved to a different country for longer than like 2 weeks. So how was that experience like just like staying in another country? I'm guessing they spoke a completely different language from you. So how was that like adapting process?
Well, here, like in our little community, there's a lot of expats, so it didn't feel too different, but still the culture is different. Like outside in the streets, like of course, they speak Arabic, maybe some English, but it was everyone was pretty welcoming, and a lot of the things are still the same, but just in a different country, if that makes sense. Like,
Yeah, and like when you go to a different country, there's like a lot of differences in culture. Like I remember when I went to China, like you see a lot of people very um like they just go up to you, approach you with signs. Well, actually that's like that in Flushing, but a lot of them have different traditions and like cultural differences. So, do you know like any distinct differences that popped out to you between Saudi Arabia and US?
Of course, there's just so many, but I guess one of the most like prominent maybe is Ramadan, and like other than like festivals with like the tradition, so, with the religion. Sorry, it's like just because the religion is a big part of life. So for example, Ramadan is like a month where um, Muslims like fast during sunlight hours. So everyone here is like pretty respectful of that, um, and yeah. Or other than that, maybe um, there's a little bit of maybe clothing guidelines you have to respect. For example, not wearing like short shorts out in the streets or too revealing clothing. But yeah, like small differences like that.
Yeah, and like overall in your experience in Saudi Arabia, do you think you've changed or learned anything new about yourself upon moving to a different country?
Um, Totally. Like I have been more like outgoing after the whole experience. Like totally willing to kind of talk to new people and learn more about them. Where like if I maybe stayed in the States for like middle school, bit of high school, um, I don't know how I would have felt about that, or just I might have stayed in a bubble. Um, but yeah, I learned that I'm kind of adaptable and I can
Yeah,
try different things without.
Mm-hmm.
that's a good point. I think, yeah, when you move to a different country, you definitely get a lot more open-minded. So, like, I know you mentioned you moved back to the States sometime. Like, I think you went to a boarding school and things of that sort. So, do you think that, like, when you come back to the US, you have, like, a different perspective or, like, a new view on things?
Yeah, kind of like maybe with my friends, a lot of my friends actually are also from other places, so it's nice to like kind of that we complement each other in our worldviews. But with like Americans like born and bred in the U.S., like maybe there's a bit of a difference in like how we think about the whole world, kind of. But like I don't know. I think I'm more open to like learning about everything rather than feeling safe in a little comfortable bubble, I guess.
Sometimes a lot of people, they just stay in one country, and sometimes people are a little bit more close-minded. They're not really as experienced as getting to know different cultures. And I really am interested, like, have you had this moment of cultural shock, like when you got there, you're just like, what, why did they do that way? I'm curious.
For example, the fact that there's no like alcohol or pork here, maybe just to throw that out there, like
Wow.
um they like that maybe influences the culture more. Like whereas for example like American youth, I don't know, maybe experiment with like alcohol or whatever. We just don't really have that here.
And like, since you live in Saudi Arabia, have you learned some Arabic?
I went to an Arabic course for a little bit a few months ago, but I like before that I learned how to read and write kind of.
Oh.
Um, but speaking, not really. I think it's a bit difficult, and I don't like. This sounds really bad, but I don't really have, I guess, the need really. Like, it's not really like if I didn't speak Arabic, I would like be totally lost. Like, it's not really like that just in our little community. But I would totally love to explore more in the future.
Yeah, so I'm
Mhm.
curious about like Arabic because I've been looking at like the writing system and it seems pretty difficult. So like, how is Arabic like? I guess like in difficulty or like have you like what are some differences between like Arabic and the languages that you're currently learning?
Hmm. Like I love Arabic's sounds, I guess, and like also how it's written. Like it's really, really nice. Like for one, they leave out short vowels in their script, so you can write them, but not like obligatorily. And then like the sounds can be hard. There's like three H kind of sounds. Like there's like a h, like typical English, h, which is more in the back of the throat, and like a ch, which is like Scottish-ish kind of. But yeah, like that, or like the k, distinction. I love the sounds, and um, yeah, I guess.
Wow, that's so cool. Like, I'm always like fascinating to hear like the sounds, the different sounds that like languages are like, because a lot of languages are super different. And just a fun fact, I have like a Arabic friend. Like, I had I was friends with her for 5 years and stuff, and she speaks Chinese too. And it's like so interesting their language. And yeah, a lot of people think it's like really hard to learn because of the script. But do you know why studying Arabic is really useful?
Um, for one, it helps a lot of people connect to their culture in terms of like it being a liturgical language for like religion. It's the language of the Quran, and other than that, it's useful kind of because it's hard because it's like a little bit niche. As in, if you learn it to a high level or if you're like native, you can get a good job maybe in like the U.S. like government, like kind of and all. So kind of in demand, I guess.
Yeah. I feel like it's kind of with Mandarin too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so now talking a little bit more about languages, what got you interested in studying the languages that you're currently learning and why Chinese and French specifically?
So I like Chinese is one of my native languages that I learned growing up with my parents, and French was in, I guess, like middle school when I moved here, first of all, and I was like, well, I have like Arabic, Spanish, and French to choose from. And like I had taken Spanish before in Texas, and I was like, maybe not. And Arabic, I was like, maybe that's too hard. So we opted for French, and it just stuck with me kind of um, a little bit through, when I was here, I learned it, and it was like, okay. But then when I got to boarding school, it really like kind of stuck for me, and I started to learn more and more.
Yeah, I'm pretty interested because you said you're like dabbling or like you're learning a little bit of ASL, which I think is really unique. So how is that? Like, or I don't mean to put you on the spot, but like, do you have like a favorite
Yeah, no
like
problem.
sign or anything like that in ASL?
Um, so like, let's see. I've like started a bit like a while ago, like 1 month ish ago with my school's club. We have a ASL club, and it's been really nice to meet up together. My favorite sign off the top of my head, let's see. This it means orange. So you like
Oh,
make a kind of closed fist and you rub it kind of against your lips, like twist it.
wow. Like, I remember in my school, like in first grade, there was like a sign language class for like a couple of weeks. And just what I remember off of that is like closed fist, and then you have W in the other hand, and then you hit the closed fist and then tap it to your mouth, like watermelon, watermelon.
So nice.
Yeah, and it's like so cool. Like there's so many like ways you can do like languages. It doesn't always have to be like with voice and like sign language. It's like so intriguing, like learning a different language that involves like movement.
Yeah, what got you
Yeah.
interested in sign language?
I guess just because it was so different. Like I had started becoming curious in middle school, and I learned to finger spell all the letters, and I kind of forgot, like left that, um, like until I had started high school, and I kind of learned how to learn a language, just because like French, the program there got me like really immersed, and it was like learn so much every day just in class, and then I kind of came back to it, and I was like, yeah, it's really interesting to. Um, be able to communicate not with like sound really, but like with your facial expressions and your hands and all.
Hmm. And just speaking like about the immersive experience, do you have any memorable language experiences that you can share?
Like went to on a French exchange. This is like kind of very general, but like I think a year ish ago, more than a year. But like over the summer for 2 weeks, I went with my school to southern France, and we were paired with like a local high school there and like their students. So we really got to interact, to be part of the culture, and learn more that way.
Yeah, that sounds great. So also, I don't know if I might be making this up, but I thought that I like read before your application that you were an italki tutor. Is that right?
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
I use the program for the platform for um, just interacting with people and also learning some languages. So yeah, that's um, it's been cool to interact with people that way. And,
Yeah. Do you have any experiences like that? Like anyone you've met from like abroad or anything like tutoring? I think do you tutor Mandarin or French?
Mandarin, French, and English.
Oh, nice.
Oh,
Wow.
wow.
Yeah.
Is it hard to get started on italki, like as a teacher?
Well, it depends on kind of your like motivation, kind of, I guess, or like how you like work with people, and if you're like open to people, and like if you're patient, I guess. Like I think it's a bit harder now, just because like of the they have, I think, an influx of teachers, and they're maybe like being more strict now, but I don't know. It's certainly a great tool to like learn and to, you know, yeah, to learn languages, certainly, even if you're not a tutor.
Yeah, I totally
Mm-hmm.
agree. Yeah, I have some italki tutors, and I totally respect them, because like my Mandarin isn't that good, and they're like so willing to help and everything. So, yeah.
Yeah, I remember like I didn't use italki before, but then here Taylor, she gets me introduced to the platform, and it's pretty cool. There's a lot of teachers to choose from, and it's really flexible. Like if you want a class at 2 a.m., you can have a class at 2 a.m. So it's like that.
Yeah. This isn't sponsored, by the way, but
No, it's not
Not
sponsored.
sponsored.
Oh, and like Andy, like I've noticed on Instagram, there's more of female language learners. Like I don't really see a lot of male language learners in the community. And what do you feel about this? How do you feel?
I would say that I like have kind of seen the same, but certainly like on YouTube, there's uh, like a, a good bunch of male um, like polyglots and language learning people. So um, I don't know. I think it's maybe just like a byproduct of like of the environment, but like that's kind of true. I'd say 50-50.
Yeah, I definitely think on YouTube, like there's a lot of guy polyglots, but then like on Instagram, usually like studygrams, there's a lot more
Mm-hmm.
females on there. I don't know. It might be the difference in like platforms or different like style, like aesthetics. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like remember that when we were talking about like statistics for like how many boys to girl ratio, remember? Like I think I have like almost 900 followers, but like only 200 of them are males. Like most of them are female.
Yeah, I think that it might just be like, yeah, like Andy said, like byproduct of like environment and different platforms that people choose to use. Um, but yeah, it's good to have representation.
Mm-hmm.
So that sounds good. We just went over a few personal questions, you, Andy, which was really great. Now we're going to be talking about the main topic and focus for today's podcast episode, which is centers on two questions. So first, how do I start learning a new language? And then how do I find the best resources and utilize those to the fullest?
So we can
Um,
start with like how do I start learning a language? Like do you prefer the academic way or self-studying?
it really depends on. I think the first question you have to ask, like when you're like wanting to start a language, is like why? Like, is it because like I have to? Is it for work, for school, or just because you're like interested in it? And I think if you're genuinely interested and not like obligated to learn the language, you can um, kind of start like anywhere, I guess. But like maybe um, I like to research the language a little bit, just go on the Wikipedia page, learn about it, like where is it spoken, like how many people speak it, or like what's the structure like, But then getting as much input as you can is important, I'd say.
And how do you get like enough input? Like what are your ways?
Definitely watching videos, and by that I mean maybe more like children like videos for children. So um, because the language is usually of a more understandable level, it's maybe simplified, and you feel like you kind of understand it a bit more rather than being confronted with like some PhD dissertation in the language or whatever. Like you can understand it, and so videos or songs, anything that's simple and that you can like internalize how the language sounds or works.
Yeah, and I definitely think that per each language, you sometimes use different methods to learn them. So, do you have any different methods that you used for like Chinese, French, ASL, or Turkish?
For those, it really depends on how I got connected with the language. So, for example, for French, it's usually just in school. Like I do some schoolwork in my classes, and if I'm interested, I like research more about the culture, the language, specific grammar points. For Turkish, with my italki tutor, who's really great, and for ASL, also with an italki tutor, but also kind of online, just researching about some signs. And there's great resources for that too, like YouTube videos, because it's very visual, of course. So yeah.
And how do you like get to learn French? Like, what are specific ways that you um, self-studied French or learned it in school?
Um, for me, having started at school, I had a pretty like um, structured intro to the language. But if you're just getting started, there's a lot of great courses out there just because it's so spoken. I can't recall any off the top of my head, but um, you should definitely get familiar with how the language is read and is spoken, just because it's a bit misleading if you read a word and you think you know what it means, or like some similarities that may be true but may also not be true, just because it's pretty similar to English. So you might fall in a trap of thinking something's true. But with the teacher is definitely a fail-safe method, I'd say, or with several teachers if you get a lot of people's input. Of course, if you don't have the resources, maybe once you're at an intermediate level, changing your phone to French to get more immersed, and YouTube videos, of course, and songs and movies can all be real helpful.
Yeah, I definitely think immersion is probably one of the best methods. And also, in terms of like classes and self study, I think it's kind of divided within the language learning community. Like,
Hmm.
do you like classes? Do you like self study? So, I guess, how do you feel about that?
I would say they can be both helpful, but for different like uses. For example, classes, if you really want to get like long-term, um, like if you want to get a long-term kind of proficiency in a language and not falter or not like forget it, or you want to pass an exam in the language, a proficiency test, then sure, classes might be the right way to go. Um, but I think you should still complement that with maybe some researching of your own, to maybe ask your teacher and all. And self-studying can be great for those who want to just learn more about the language or like have fun with it. Um, and it
Hmm.
can also be done effectively and actually give you a nice foundation of language. So really, both work depending on your time or your money or how you feel about the language.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and like for learners that want to go more of the self-study route, maybe they didn't really like classes in school, how would you recommend them starting to do the self-study journey? Like, what should they start studying first?
I am totally like a big grammar nerd, so maybe not applicable to everyone, but like um, just for everyone, maybe finding a resource, whether it be a book, a YouTube series that you're really interested in, that meets your goals for language. For example, if you're like, if you want to learn a language because you want to like, I don't know, become a doctor in that language, of course you're not gonna um, watch maybe like more like cultural kind of like movies, but like if you're interested in the culture, then of course it's the opposite, and you wouldn't read like academic journals in the language. So find what speaks to you, and you'll definitely be able to stick around for longer and like to not give up, to keep motivated.
Yeah, that's a great
Mhm.
point. Like choosing your resources wisely based on your interests. I mean, there's no to say that you can't learn both through like school classes and also through self study. Because I that's what I do through Spanish right now. Because I've been learning Spanish for a really long time, and that's obviously in school. And then at
Mhm.
home, like I got interested in the culture and the language, so I also self study myself too. There's no to say you can't do both. So.
Yeah.
Taylor, like, what do you think personally? Like, how should people start learning a language? Like, what should they do first?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with Andy's like points about like, you need to find your why, you need to find your reason. And I think that for me too, like it was completely different with Chinese and Spanish. So Spanish, I've been learning that like most of my life in school. And then I guess like through that, I got interested in the culture. And because my dad's Mexican, so I got interested that way. And then also for Chinese, I think you just have to find the reason why. So for Chinese, I got interested, of course, because my family's Chinese, but also because, I liked watching like entertainment videos and listening to music in Chinese. So yeah, that was my kind of way of learning Chinese.
Yeah, and like for me, like if you want to start learning a language, I would tell everyone look up 50 of the most basic phrases, like the ones that you need to survive like in a country. For example, not where is the bathroom? Everybody goes to that phrase all the time, but it's like, "Hi, what's your name? My name is Lily. I want this. How much is this?" Like just learn from the language that is most commonly spoken and then work your way up.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a great point as well. I think like when you're starting to learn a language, it's good to find a solid resource. So whether it be like a textbook or like an online website, something that you can get like basic grammar in and like basic vocab in to have like simple conversations. And then from that point, once you start getting more and more advanced, I think you can diversify like all the resources that you use and use like YouTube videos, or like if you like reading, then like find a good book that's like maybe not too difficult, and things like that, just based on what you like to do.
And based off of that, like a lot of people don't really know what's the best resource. Like, so how do I find the best resources and how do I utilize resources to the fullest?
I think that's something uh, that definitely needs a lot of trial and error, kind of like no one person really fits like a mold of like this, like works for everyone. Or so you'll definitely need to experiment with a resource, maybe use it for a good amount of time, maybe a week or so, and then make a judgment on if you think like it's too boring or if it's actually useful, and you can dedicate yourself. But really um, have to like see if you're learning enough or if you feel that you're learning enough and staying interested, I think.
Yeah, and what's your opinion on textbooks?
Textbooks can be a good tool to um, kind of explain the grammar, but of course that should be put in practice with like conversation. And if a textbook like explains a cultural point, you should definitely maybe ask someone like of that culture of the language, like what do they think? Like, is this like 100% right? Like, you know, but textbooks can be good if used like correctly, and definitely shouldn't be like bogging you down. If you're just learning the language like 100% through textbook, you should maybe talk to someone or like read and write also. So
hmm
Yeah, and I think definitely when starting learning languages, I was really confused because there's so many different resources. Like some people were telling me like get a textbook, and some people were like no, just like watch TV or like do Duolingo or like do different things or like maybe schedule italki lessons. So I think especially starting out learning languages, there's so many resources thrown at you, especially for languages like Mandarin or Spanish that are heavily spoken. It's really hard to find like a main resource. So how do you think that people can like narrow it down and find maybe like one or a few resources that best fit them during the beginner stages?
if you don't really have much experience, maybe asking someone of like who speaks the language, maybe a friend or a tutor, if you can, to just like sit down with you or um, go through some resources and kind of like what they think, like if it's too formal, or if it's like good. So narrowing it down means you have to have a good range, right? You don't want to maybe use like three different textbooks rather than like a textbook, maybe podcast series or like YouTube like series. I think the combination of three different like forms of media might be better than just like different textbooks. So you want to keep that range, I think.
hmm And do you have like a favorite app that you like to use for studying a language?
I don't have one favorite, um, but I think a good dictionary can help in any language, right? When you hear someone say like this word in this language means this in English or in another language, like going to a dictionary and like checking that or if it has different meanings um, can really help and clear up some confusion because not everything's translated like perfectly. So
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, of course.
And like, do you have like specific names for some apps? Like, it can be like some that you use, or like the app that you use for dictionary in a certain language.
Yeah, so online, this isn't really an app, but I use one called lingui.com, Linguee. Online. It's like a really good resource for um, like English to any language or any language to any language, kind of like almost. But it once you search up a word, it shows you a lot of sentences that it found online that it kind of matches up. Oh, I think this word means this word, but it's of course like a machine, so um, oftentimes it's not exactly right, but it does give good insight into how it's used, how a word is used, and
Also, going off the resource point, I think that the resources that you pick also depend on, the goals that you set for yourself. Like people who study in school have different goals, like maybe to pass my exam or something. So I think that would be better suited for like a textbook if you're trying to go to the traditional route. But if it's like, oh, I want to go to China and study or like stay there for like 6 months, I think you would better be suited to like learn how to speak the language. So I think that also depends on which resources that you choose as well.
yeah, of course.
And Andy, do you use like any like foreign exchange apps, like for example, Tandem, HelloTalk, and what do you think about them?
I tried using Tandem, I think, a while ago, and I think they can be a good tool if you like end up like finding someone that you connect with and that you like can share a culture with. But I usually use like Reddit honestly at like language exchange, and I
Mm-hmm.
found like a few good um, friends, but it can be a bit of a commitment if you both want to help each other and like for it to not be one-sided. Kind of, it can be tricky
Mm-hmm.
time-wise and like balance-wise. So
Yeah. I think learning like exchange apps are pretty nice too. You get to meet a lot of
Yeah.
people from all over the world.
Oh, and I have like personal stories with Tandem. Like, so this year I've had a goal to like improve my Spanish by a lot, like how to speak more native and stuff. So I've been using Tandem like so many times a week and talking to people like from Ecuador, from España, Spain, Mexico, and you can really like um learn a lot from natives because it's not really like textbook structure. They're not going to teach you how to say this in a textbook. And yeah, what you said before, sometimes like it's not really mutual help. So it's good to state from the beginning that you say, I want to learn your language too, and I hope we can be equal and help each other.
Yeah, so I think that is it for our segment on how do I start learning a language and what are the best resources and how do we use those resources to the fullest. So now we can get started on our final segment, which is just a Q&A from Instagram. So some people, we had a poll on Instagram on our stories asking Andy any questions. And yeah, a few of our followers asked us some questions. So Lily, you can go first.
Okay, so like we got from Aang Kochin. Aang Kochin asked reasons why you started learning Turkish. Like, why did you start learning Turkish?
I started learning Turkish because I had gone to Turkey like I think a few years back, and I really liked it. So when I was like kind of choosing a new language to learn over quarantine, I was like, why not Turkish? And I like researched the language a bit more, and it had a lot of cool features that I liked and that I thought it might be like a fun challenge, like for example, vowel harmony or like very agglutinative, making long words, and the grammar is very different from English, which I also enjoyed, and it was also written with the Roman alphabet, so that made it a bit easier, honestly, and had a nice history too, which I enjoyed. So all those factors combined meant I like found it a really fun challenge to learn.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Mhm.
Our second question is from Anat_Young, and she asked, how's moving from the US to Saudi Arabia, and are there things that you like more about either place?
Yeah, good question. I can't say that I like one place better than the other, but things I like more. For example, the weather can be like a double-edged sword because it can get kind of hot in the summer. And I also miss the snow when I'm here. But in the winter, like kind of now, it's like really nice weather. Like coldest is like 10 degrees Celsius or like 60-ish, 70-ish. So it's not, or like 50-ish, more like Fahrenheit. So it's not that cold, but it's very nice and chilly sometimes. That's really nice. And gosh, what else? Things I like more. Food, definitely. There's a lot of different types of food here, which of course you can also get in the US. Um, but yeah, that's a big part of it too. I think the community here is quite nice.
Yeah, what's your favorite food?
My favorite food that I've tried here, I would guess maybe
Yeah.
samosas, which are like triangle shaped pastries of dough filled with, it can be cheese or like peas and meat and everything, but they're fried and they're really nice, I'd say. Samosas are cool.
Yeah.
Wow, I've tried samosas. They taste like delicious. So if any of you listening didn't try, you should go out, buy a samosa and like chill, you know?
Yeah.
Before we conclude, could you teach us your favorite word or phrase in French?
Okay, I think maybe probably not my favorite, but one that's pretty useful and kind of different is like le confinement, which means quarantine nowadays. So it's written like the English word for like confinement, but that's not really what it means, kind of. So le confinement
It's like confinement, right?
is kind of how it's spelled. Yeah.
Oh,
So I
nice.
thought that was a nice trick. Yeah.
So, and before we leave off, we usually like to ask our guests, like, what's one piece of advice that you give to anyone starting to learn a language?
Find what works for you and totally dive into it and pay minimal attention to like kind of what others think. If it's like if they're trying to discourage you or they're like you should learn another language because it's more helpful. Keep in mind that they don't know 100% maybe your goals, and they can just like are a very kind of narrow judgment. So only you know what's best for you, and just keep on. Yeah.
Yep, great advice. Okay, so that about wraps up for today's podcast episode. Thank you so much for joining us today, Andy. It was a pleasure talking to you and learning about your language learning journey.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, of course. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks. Y'all too.